All right. Oh, where do you start with the Philadelphia 76ers? The Murphy's Law thing. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. That is exactly what happened to the 76ers last night. And there's so much blame to go around. I mean, it's almost frustrating to have to try to put blame on how they collapsed so epically after having an enormous 26-point lead. And I don't know which of the stats are the worst. Whether it's the fact that they had the previous 25 years had 165 games where they led by 25 points or more and had never lost, and now in those type of games they are 165 and 1. Or the fact that Ben Simmons, who, I mean, we got to stop calling him a superstar. I know he's a great defender. Maybe we can just leave it at that. Ben Simmons is a great defender. He's not a superstar. When you are 4 or 14 from the line and they're hacking a Simmons in the first half and then obviously doing it down the stretch, and you're a liability to your team, missing 4 important field goals in a game that you lost by 3 points, that's kind of, you're hurting your team, man. You know, you're less of an asset than you are. You're more of a liability and less of an asset when that's the case. And especially because talk about game 5 or game 4. We didn't take any shots in the second half. He also didn't take any shots in the second half in this game. He is shying away from the responsibility of being one of the stars on this team. Probably to me, though, the most damning one is the fact that 2 76ers scored in the second half. 2. Joel Embiid and Seth Curry. It's almost by accident somebody's going to get a tip in or a rebound and a putback or just make a mid-range jump shot or a three. Somebody do something other than Joel Embiid. We talked about this after game 4. The Doc Rivers-led 76ers are so reliant on Joel Embiid, and I'm sure that Joel relishes that role. He wants to be this megastar and be responsible and reliable and available, despite working through a meniscus tear. He wants to grind, but he's a big man. And he gets worn down, and it shows every single game. He started the game 8 of 8. He looked like he was on a mission last night, and then he finished the game only making 4 more of his 12 shots. So his stat line looks fantastic, 12 of 20. But when it mattered down the stretch, Joel Embiid, who also missed a couple of free throws when it mattered, he faltered because of fatigue. Like, you can only do so much by yourself in any sport, particularly in the NBA. Now, this glosses over the obvious platitudes that we have to throw on the Atlanta Hawks, because Trae Young is becoming a superstar. You know, forget a star. He's already been that. He probably stepped into the league and he was a little bit of a star. But he's becoming a superstar before our eyes. The kind of player who you respect because of his game, but more importantly, as an opponent, you hate him. You despise him. We saw this in the Knicks series in round 1, where he's egging on the Garden crowd. He's talking trash to Spike Lee like he's Reggie Miller. This kid's 22 years old, and he has full command of his brand, of his psyche, of his aura, and it shows on game day. He makes plays when his team needs him to make plays. He's evolved into this superstar. And I remember we had this conversation middle of the season. Lloyd Pierce was still the head coach of the Atlanta Hawks, and Trae Young was trying to do it all. Right, he was trying to be Mr. Everything. I got to score every bucket. I got to, heavily handle the ball. I got to, suck it into a black hole. And the Hawks were bad. They weren't good. They have talent, right? John Collins is a good player. Bogdanovich are good players. But they were all dependent upon Trae Young. He gets fired, and Nate McMillan takes over, and the accountability changed. And that was one of the great things to happen to Trae Young, because he learned like that. And this is something that sometimes takes a couple of years for players to learn. He learned like that how to be a leader, a distributor, obviously the great scorer that he is, but become more efficient, keep the ball moving and active so that everybody can participate. And right before, like I said, our eyes, we've seen Trae Young, and this postseason is proving it, turn into a superstar. So you have to give credit. You have to the Atlanta Hawks for their scrappiness, for their we don't know any better mentality. And Nate McMillan deserves a ton of that. I mean, in my mind, he was the last coach that I thought I would be talking about as one of the great ones left in this postseason. But what he's doing with Atlanta, a team that is undersized and overmatched on paper, yet still playing with a cockiness and a confidence that is just hard to combat. And they have this belief in themselves, right? It's probably the hardest thing in sports to channel and to inject and push onto the entirety of your team. A belief, despite the odds, to be able to achieve great things. Yet Nate McMillan has done that, and it's not all rah-rah. I mean, you listen to the reports of what happened in the locker room at halftime. It wasn't a complete rah-rah speech. It was really just a refocusing on the little things. You chip away here and there. Lou Williams, who comes off the bench, who's been a fantastic, one of the great bench players in the history of the NBA. He starts making some shots in the second half, and before you know it, they're in the game. And they come back and they win. And now they have control and with a chance to eliminate the 76ers, who are the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, the best team in the East for a lot of the year, really the entirety of the year. Even though Joel Embiid missed some time, they stave off the Brooklyn Nets, who battled injuries throughout the season. The Sixers should be the team counting they're punching, I should say, their ticket to the Eastern Conference Final, but they don't have the mentality that this young upstart Atlanta Hawks team has. So hats off to them. Kudos to them. They are one of the fun teams to watch because they don't know any better. Right? It's almost that almost makes it easy. We're not supposed to win, so who cares? Right? Let's just go play with reckless abandon. And it's not even reckless. Let's go play with controlled abandon and have fun doing it. And it's fun to watch them, especially with Trae Young as the guy at the helm. With that said, this is clearly on the 76ers. When you're winning by 26 points, when you go into the fourth quarter up 18 in your own house, a full house, it's loud and obnoxious and raucous. I mean, they did the decibel thing. They always do that in these closed arenas. It's up around 95 to 100, right? They should have had the energy to finish. Too comfortable? What do you think you are? You think you're like 3-time champions? Eastern Conference perpetual finalist? Who do you think you are that you get comfortable with a lead? I want to put it on Doc Rivers. You have to. He's the coach. By the way, he's got a history of this. He's collapsed a lot. Back in 2003 with the Magic, he blew a 3-1 lead against the Pistons. Same thing happened back in 2015 with the Clippers. He blew a 3-1 lead against the Rockets. Same thing happened last year, actually, in the bubble. The Clippers blow a 3-1 lead against the Denver Nuggets. Doc Rivers has a problem when there's pressure and there's moments that your team has to step up. And I know it's not on him fully because he's not on the court. He used to dribble it around on the basketball court. He's been in the coaching realm for a long time now. He's actually one of the really good coaches. But what keeps him from being a great are situations like this, are moments like this, when you have your great defensive player like Ben Simmons saying, we get complacent? How the hell do you get complacent in the second round of the NBA postseason, the Eastern Conference semifinals. How do you just take it for granted? Just because you have a big lead, you think it's going to stick? By the way, don't you remember the Atlanta Hawks early in this series? They had a huge lead on you. They were beating you by 30, and you almost came back and won, right? You almost did it. What's to say they can't flip the script? The fact that Ben Simmons says that this team is complacent is troubling. It screams of a lack of urgency. I'm not going to say leadership because I think they are well led. The organization has been fantastic. This process, which took forever, it finally came to fruition, and it worked. And I believe that Doc Rivers is a good coach. But to have these inexplicable things happen, an 18-point lead they blew in Game 4, a 26-point lead they blow in Game 5. What in the hell is going on? And as much as I am maligning Doc Rivers, I can't help but look at Ben Simmons. I can't. It's a 2-star league. They drafted Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons to be their 2 stars. Yes, there were some fits and starts and some misses with some of those first-round picks, but Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons should be their 2 stars. You don't shoot in the second half. He had 1 assist, I believe, also in the last 2 games in the second half. You don't shoot 3-pointers. You don't even attempt it. Just jack one up. Who cares? Maybe it'll go in. Maybe you get lucky. At least you're trying. It's almost like he's not trying, that he's scared to try. And I want to put that on the coach as well, but this is on Ben Simmons, man. Ben Simmons is afraid to be a star. And it's clear because at this point in games and this point in the season, you have to put every bit of your effort at scoring. Now, maybe he just hasn't been developed well enough. But who is that? Who's that on? Is that on his coaches? I'm sure his coaches aren't saying, hey, Ben, don't take any 3-pointers. Hey, Ben, I know you're 6'10", almost 6'11" with your shoes on, but you don't have a post game. If you're not literally at the rim, you can't play with your back to the basket, right? You can't front up and play at the basket. What can you do? What do you do well other than play great defense? Because if you're not a both side player in the NBA, you are not going to win. You're not. Especially if you're relying so heavily on Joel Embiid. The statistics out of this game are frightening. They are frighteningly bad, especially in the second half. And God, I really wanted them to be the team because this process was something that you want to say, hey, it worked. It's not going to work, man. If the Atlanta Hawks, who should not be handling you like they're handling you, are doing what they're doing to you, you have no chance when you get to the Eastern Conference Finals, whether it's against the Bucks or the Nets, and you certainly won't if you get to the NBA Finals where the stakes are seriously high. It's everybody's fault. This is Murphy's Law, man. Anything that could go wrong has gone wrong for the Philadelphia 76ers. You better stop putting your money on them because I'm not sure they can come back from something like that. That was ugly.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to be notified when we drop fresh content.